Welcome into the Thunder Basketball Universe presented by COOP Ale Works. Nick and I are back from a quick 2-game East Coast road trip. Started in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, and then headed a little bit more out east to New York City. And 2 really good games for the Thunder. One, they fell short, but they were able to continue on some really strong offensive execution and carry that into Brooklyn, where they walked away with a massive win.
Big time victory for the Thunder to snap a skid. And as you mentioned, the offense really on point these last few games. They didn't get the results against Minnesota, but they were playing the right style, the way that they wanted to play. And then they were able to go on the road at Washington, and that was a tight game, 122-118 finish. The defense let them down a little bit in that game, but the offense was really humming, really efficient on that end of the floor, and then that all carried over to Brooklyn, where they put up season highs in like every single category that you can ask for: points, 3-point makes, field goal percentage, all the good stuff.
And we saw a lot of different guys contribute on both ends of the floor in that Brooklyn game specifically, and some guys stepping up in that Washington game to help kind of keep the offense going and take that game down to the wire and give the Thunder a chance down the stretch. I say we jump into You Can Shay That Again.
Let's do it.
And we can start talking about some of this. I'll let you go first.
Okay, my quote is, "We were jabbing tonight, and that created some space for us."
See, they weren't necessarily throwing haymakers.
That's right.
But they were jabbing.
Yeah. That was Darius Bazley. And, maybe the last 2 or 3 weeks, Mark Daigneault has talked about, this team has been good all year long at being able to withstand some punches that teams have thrown at them. They know going into most of these games, they're going to be younger. They're going to be less physically developed. They're going to be less experienced than the team that they're going up against. They're going to take some hits. Yep. But the Thunder has come back from 7 double-digit deficits, a bunch of deficits from 15 points down. They've been one of the best in the league at making comebacks, at coming back and making games tight at the end of the game. And, as a result of that, they've kind of worked that muscle. The muscle that Mark Daigneault wants them to be able to start flexing is the one where they can deliver the first punch, or they, coming out of halftime, can go on a big 15-2 run and absolutely bewilder the opponent. And that's exactly what the Thunder did against a road-weary Brooklyn team, a short-handed Brooklyn team. It's the exact type of thing that, as the Thunder tries to progress into a good, solid, strong NBA team, you've got to take care of business against a team when they're on the ropes like that.
And not just throw a punch, but throw the first punch.
Yes,
and that's exactly what the Thunder did, because all season long, it's been that first quarter where the Thunder's kind of struggled to get going offensively, and that's why they've had to claw their way back into a lot of games. But in this game against Brooklyn, they shot out ahead. I think 12 was the largest lead in the first quarter, and then they ballooned it to 22 in the second quarter. So throwing the first punch and giving themselves a little bit of a buffer so that when the second half rolled around, they had a little bit of cushion to work with when Brooklyn undoubtedly, tried to throw their punches and tried to kind of, mess up the rhythm and flow of that game. The Thunder had a cushion and were able to kind of hold them off for the rest of the game.
You watch enough NBA basketball and you know that game was going to eventually get down to like 9 or 10 or 8. I think it was 8. And it just, that happens. That is the rhythm of how these games go when a team builds a 20-point lead. The question is whether the team that has built that lead sustains it or whether they give it up completely. And the Thunder did not give it up. They got off on that 16-2 run in that first quarter that you mentioned. And Shea told us after the game, he really took that personally, that concept of delivering the first punch in the first quarter. And he and Lou combined for, I think, 19 of the Thunder's first 21 points. They were just really on it. These are the guys that carpool places. They're just so close together.
Neighbors, basically.
The Canadian twins, we sometimes call them. So, I think that they have to some degree a shared mindset about, hey, we've been through some of these battles together now for a few years. Like, it's on us. It's our responsibility as starters to get things kicked off the right way.
Something else I want to point out here is the poise, right? And so you talked about being able to take punches, be able to deliver punches. The poise that the Thunder has shown when they're taking a lot of punches, like, we're down, we have to fight back, we're not going to get rattled, and we're not going to, call this game a wash because we're down 15, 16 points. I think it also showed a lot of poise and a lot of character to come out of the gate strong, but then recognize at halftime, this is a team with James Harden on the floor, and they want to win. They're on their home floor. okay, we got to come out with a 0-0 mentality out of halftime. That's something that Coach Dagnall said is even more difficult than being down and having to flush whatever just happened in front, or 10 minutes ago, and come out and play 0-0. It's harder to be 0-0 when you're ahead and things are going well, and having to flush something that went well and get back to even, and recognize that, you have to show some poise out here out of the gates.
This might be an understatement, but winning an NBA game is hard. And in fact, sometimes you're most vulnerable when you have a lead.
Right.
Because what you've done to that point has been working. And, just natural human nature is, okay, let's keep doing what we've done. Or, hey, we're good. Like, let's just, it's not complacency, but it's just status quo. And inevitably, the other team, the team that's losing, is going to do everything they possibly can to disrupt that status quo.
Very true.
And so that's exactly what Brooklyn did. They threw out a box and one to try to disrupt Shea's rhythm. Shea said he took it as a compliment, which I would too.
Yeah.
And then, the Thunder had to adjust and deal with that.
Yep. And the good thing that worked out in the Thunder's favor was that their offense was humming at a high level through all 4 quarters. Even when that box and one was out there, the Thunder's offense really didn't, step back much, didn't face much of a hiccup. I'm going to go into you can share that again, because I think this is what my guy was talking about here.
Yeah.
I almost gave it away. Be careful there. Okay. Mine is, we're trying to build a style, and we're trying to build an identity, and we're trying to build it on the things we can control.
I mean, this sounds like a Mark Daigneault quote.
Is it Mark Daigneault? I don't know.
I think it is.
Yeah, it's Mark. Tried to throw you off there. It's definitely Mark Daigneault, and this was off of my question about just the offensive carryover that the Thunder showed from Washington, even to the Denver game. The Thunder played the way that they wanted to play offensively. The defense wasn't necessarily there to give them the win and the edge and then, take them over the hump there. But the offense showed a lot of execution. One area in particular were the assist numbers. Mm-hmm. The Thunder has had 20 or more assists in now 7 straight games. But the thing here is the turnovers haven't risen with the amount of ball movement that the Thunder has been able to kind of accumulate here. Stayed below 12 turnovers for, I think, for the past 4 games or
six out of the last 9 for sure.
Right. Yeah. Definitely that. But I mean, not above 10 in these past 2. Mm-hmm. And that says a lot about the execution, the sharpness, and there's two factors at play with ball movement, right? You've got the guy with the ball, handling the ball, making the decisions, attacking downhill. Then you've got the folks off the ball who are trying to work to help the guy with the ball make the easy pass.
Right.
And it takes both of those guys working in conjunction, working together, and on the same page to eliminate turnovers and miscues.
And the key is for all 5 guys on the floor to anticipate and be ready for their teammates' movements. So one of the things that often gets talked about in NBA offenses is, do what's expected. Mm-hmm. And that's why you practice. That's why guys hone what their shots are going to be. We talked about Mike Muscala practicing jumping because he knows exactly what defensive situations he's going to be in. A guy like Mike Muscala, Jeremiah Robinson Earl told us, he only takes shots that he's going to take in the game when he's practicing. And so, when you're shooting from positions and locations on the floor and in rhythms from passes on the floor that your teammates are expecting, it's so much easier for everyone to understand, okay, if I deliver this pass here or if I drive here, I know where all my teammates are going to be. That's one of the skills that Josh Giddey has that's just out of this world, is he has this innate understanding of where his other 4 teammates are going to be on the floor at all times. But part of that is because before that Brooklyn game, the Thunder had a 3-hour practice at the Players Association in Manhattan the day before. Like, they were getting on the same page. And the results were the explosion of assists, the 130 points, and the limited turnovers.
And in addition to that 3-hour practice, the Thunder has the league leader in drives per game. Mm-hmm. So every single game, they're getting reps in, okay, when Shea attacks to the basket, here's where I can be to create a window, and I know that Shea is going to find me. Or I know it would really help if I kind of shape down to the corner a little bit, and maybe he has a better angle to try to get the ball out to me. Those sort of reps, those little, actions in the game, those accumulate. And then you get an opportunity like you do in Brooklyn where shots are falling, things are falling in your favor, the hoop looks like a hula hoop. And when you're doing all of the right things that you've practiced, you've worked on throughout the season, now when the shots are falling, you get the amount of points that the Thunder put up against Brooklyn.
Yeah.
130.
The relocations are huge.
Yes.
On the wings, the guys who are rolling to the rim. I think about Darius Baisley, who I mentioned earlier, and it's something that we talked about with Mike Muscala after the game, is just his ability now in this flux position coming off the bench of sometimes he's a 5, sometimes he's a 4. Either way, he's setting some screens and rolling and putting pressure on defenses there. The fact that his teammates know how he's rolling to the rim, where he's going to be, that a guy like Trey Mann is shifting off to the perimeter. Mike Muscala talked about, the ways in which he's able to get out of screening actions and pop quickly. Like, all of that innate understanding becomes instinctual, and that's what allows teams to just play without thinking. They Mike said that Mark called a lot of nice play calls, but you didn't see a whole lot of shutting down the studio and making sure everybody knew exactly what was coming. It was just kind of like a quick hand signal, and then guys were into it. They're playing off of each other.
Yep. And Mark went on to say in this quote that, we're trying to build it on the things we can control, and shot making's not one of them.
Right.
And that's critical. That's key, especially when you have a lot of young developing players. You don't want to hinge your success on shot making. You want to be able to set a strong foundation of, okay, move without the ball, share the ball, and attack downhill. Those are the things you control every single time on an offensive possession. And that's something that the Thunder's been doing throughout the season. And like I said, when the shots start falling, then you start to see how all of this stuff works together and how effective it can be when the shots are falling at a high rate.
There's one other layer to this
that
I think dovetails perfectly into my Name That Dude.
Okay. Feel free.
The stat line on this is 38, 32, 30, and 30.
Oh, I know exactly what this is.
Right.
This is the Thunder's scoring through 4 quarters.
Right. So the reason I pointed this out was it was above 30 every single quarter in that game at Brooklyn. And there's a level of consistency there that the Thunder has been striving for all season long. To have that type of high-level offensive output in each quarter of a game has been something it's been chasing this year. The mantra has been, let's be a 48-minute basketball
48
team.
minutes.
And that can sound trite and it can sound obvious. Like, you want to be able to play for 48 minutes. But again, that's hard to do. And so for the Thunder to actually be able to accomplish that, I think should be celebrated in that this team needs to be able to go from timeout to timeout and not lose focus.
Right.
They need to go from the quarter break to the start of the next quarter without having a letdown. Yes, the opposing team is going to have a run at some point, but you've got to be able to continue to move the scoreboard forward enough to keep that run at bay. And that's what the Thunder did in the third and fourth quarters when Brooklyn tried to mix things up. They were still able to score 60 points in the second half. And maybe earlier this season, that number is, 46 or 48, and they're not able to quite generate that same offensive punch.
Right.
And then suddenly that victory, 130 to 109, is a lot more tenuous, and the game pressure just ratchets up to like an insane degree.
And in enemy territory, that can be extremely dangerous. Nick, you and I were both sitting there. It was loud in that building. We could barely hear our producers in our ear. And that's just the opposing team environment. And so you want to be able to create the cushion that the Thunder created. One other thing here that I wanted to point out is that it took consistency on the offensive end to, not steer away from what has gotten you this success and this, margin of victory that you have so far. But it also took everybody that stepped onto the floor. The bench had 42 points in that game, and that's coming off of a strong bench performance in Washington. Every single person that stepped onto the floor, Ty Jerome, whenever the Nets went on kind of a little bit of a run to cut it to 8 points with, I think, like 8.5 minutes left in the game, Thunder really needed a bucket. Ty Jerome had been, I think, like 0 for 3 or maybe 0 for 4 at that point. Knocked down a corner 3, and that's the spark that the Thunder needed to close out the game on, I think, like a 13-4 run or something like that to really secure the victory. Mind you, Ty Jerome came off the bench. Same for Mike Muscala, who went a perfect 4 for 4 from 3. How many times?
The fourth time that Mike has scored more points than he has minutes played in a game, which is just stunning.
Exactly. Yeah. So it just took every single person locked in, because if one person came into the game off of the bench and their head wasn't in it, they weren't locked in, they were looking for theirs, that could really, throw a pebble in the path of, this really humming train that the Thunder's offense was at that point in the game.
Yeah, there's connectiveness on the floor.
Mhm.
Ty Jerome had 6 assists. Darius Baisley goes for 16 points on 9 shots off the bench, just playing simple. Like
Yes.
that's one of the things that each of these players, as they're continuing to refine their games, once they've exited sort of the exploration phase of their development, it's maximizing what they do within their role. We're starting to see Darius, even though he is still quite young, there's still some more things to uncover and explore with him. You know, he's above 150 games now played in the NBA. There are some things that he recognizes, like, hey, if I run the floor, if I rebound, if I attack the rim off closeouts, and if I just catch and shoot open shots, I'm going to be fine.
Yep. And we're seeing Aaron Wiggins do this too. I mean, he's obviously a rookie, still young, still exploring, but he is playing a simple game, and he is playing really aggressively inside his role. One guy who,
mind you, 3 years older than Darius Baisley, just
crazy
to remind everybody of the context of how young some of these guys are.
And one guy who is just like the headline poster child for this, obviously Mike Muscala does a fantastic job. Kenrich Williams, who didn't play in this game. He is in health and safety protocols, but he is just the poster child of playing within their role and just really playing it as aggressively as possible within your role and in your lane. And he has done a fantastic job of that, just all over the floor for the Thunder.
All right. Who's your dude?
24 for 40 from the field, 65 points, 17 assists. I'm pretty sure my math is right on this. And I just want to preface this with, I did this math.
40.
Hold on. If I get this wrong, I just want everybody to know. It was 2:30 in the morning on the flight back from New York City.
I thought I was the only one still awake on the flight.
Oh,
you were up there? Okay, well, I didn't see your light on.
Open,
yeah, nice.
Trying to crunch some numbers with half of a brain working. And this is what I came up with. So I apologize if this is incorrect, but now you know why, if it is.
Say it again.
24 for 40 from the field. Hyper efficient. That's 60%.
Okay.
If my numbers are serving me correctly. 65 points, 17 assists.
This is Shea over the last 2 games.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm right. Somebody out there is crunching the numbers right now. Put it in the comments if I get it incorrectly. But yes, this is Shea over the past 2 games. And this is after kind of he wasn't at his best. He wasn't throwing his fast pitch, as Mark Dagnall would say, offensively. And yet he was still able to be a strong facilitator for the Thunder offense, because regardless of if Shea is scoring 20 or 30 points on the floor, you have to respect the man if he is attacking downhill and trying to get to the rim. This is the league leader in drives per game. So he's going to garner a lot of attention regardless of the output that he's putting in offensively. Because of that, he is still able to be a strong facilitator offensively because he gets downhill. The defense collapses. He's able to kick it out. And now guys are playing against closeouts and playing against a disadvantaged defense. But in these past 2 games, we have seen just like a determined Shai Gilgeous-Alexander trying to get downhill, attack the rim, and finish at the rim. There's some new moves from Shai that I don't think I've seen.
There's
before.
Always new moves.
I know.
He never does it the same way. It's crazy.
And it was this. I don't remember. I think it was this Brooklyn game where he got downhill to the rim, and I think I turned to you. I was like, how did he finish that? How did that ball get through the rim?
The one that I loved was, so he splits the double with kind of this like push ahead dribble.
Yes.
The ball gets to his left hand. Somehow he catches up to the ball in the middle of the lane. You know, the 2 defenders try to like squeeze him at the top of the key. He gets to the ball and he gets to his left hand. Guys come converging over. He puts up a layup lefty, like from straight on, banks it in plus the foul. That's not easy to do. No. I mean, that's not even his dominant hand. And banking anything like straight on while you're on the move, while you're getting hit, like, get real. But he did it anyway. I want to touch on the point that you were making earlier about the balance that Shai has between being a facilitator and being a scorer when he is a driver. He leads the NBA in passes per game on drives.
Yep.
He passes about 41% of the time, which, you know, is more than most of his peers. You know, those guys are typically in the 30s, like low 30s in terms of how often they're passing. So Shai is passing a lot in those situations, yet he's still scoring 13 points a game on drives, and he's shooting probably his most efficient on any type of play.
Yeah.
He's about 48, 49% shooting on drives. So he's told us, like, I know that I'm at my best self when I'm driving to the paint, when I'm getting in the lane, when I'm mixing it up down there. Of course, that's what opposing teams are trying to take away at every single turn.
Hence the box and one.
Right. So, in the Washington game, he was really able to get downhill because they were playing so aggressively defensively. They were up on everything. He was able to just basically turn the corner and get around guys and use that herky-jerky style and spin moves and the length and the scooping lefty layups, all that stuff.
Unreal.
Like everything that's in the layup package that we talk about. But at the same time, when they did shift to some different coverages, he was just making the right play and he was able to stay efficient. He wasn't forcing anything. 11 for 18 shooting. I mean, that's incredible to generate 33 points.
And one other thing I want to point out here is getting downhill does a lot of stuff for not just Shai, but the whole team. Obviously, I mentioned the kickouts and playing against closeouts. Shai also got to the free throw line a lot in this game, which is critical, especially when the Thunder was really, humming at a high level offensively. You got to keep the scoreboard moving.
Right.
And so just because you're not getting a bucket, just because you're not getting a kick out three doesn't mean that you can't be effective offensively. Shai was 9 for 10 from the free throw line in that ball game. And that was 9 of the Thunder's 16 free throws. So it just goes to show that when Shai's getting downhill, he's his best self because it can create, obviously, just the eye-popping, the highlight-worthy finishes where he's finishing with the left hand but took off on the right foot and, crossed his arms and his legs and still managed to finish the ball. But also kickouts for threes and also getting to the free throw line.
Yeah, Shai's now back up to top 10 in free throw attempts per game. Right. That's where he should be. That's where, from the very first day he stepped in Oklahoma City, he said, I know that I got to get to the free throw line to be an elite scorer, and I don't have the data to track this, but I would almost guarantee you that you could draw a straight line on a graph for how Shai performs and how the Thunder performs based on how he's getting the free throw line.
Yes, absolutely perfect. Okay, that's all. You got anything else on these name those dudes
today? Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a short break here, and we'll be right back right after this.
COOP Ale Works is the proud sponsor of Thunder Basketball Universe. Brewers of the fan favorites F5 IPA and 99-calorie Ice Chest IPA. You'll find those and many more COOP beers at retailers across Oklahoma. Learn more at coopaleworks.com.
We had a lot of things during this road trip that blessed our timeline, so we are now at that point of the podcast where we need to share those with you because they were pretty special. And Callow, I'll let you take this first one because I'm not gonna lie, I actually missed this when it happened.
Okay, so at the end of the game, the fans in Brooklyn were very talkative during the course of the game. Very like so. A lot of banter. They're kind of close to the Thunder bench and. There's a lot of the crowd in Brooklyn is very unique because the team has not been there for that long. You see a ton of Thunder jerseys in the crowd, and there's a lot of NBA fans there. There's definitely tons of Nets fans as well, but just there's a lot of fans that you can tell are there to see the stars and see the guys that everybody's clamoring about. So. People are shouting at Lou Dort to give them their jersey. People are talking to Josh and Shai and everybody. But this kid that was sitting a couple rows behind the Thunder bench got Shai's attention and kept asking for him to take a selfie. And Shai couldn't get back around behind the bench. There's it's kind of cordoned off. The kid threw his cell phone to Shai.
Oh my gosh.
When Shai was standing on the bench as the game was coming to a close. I think actually the final buzzer had sounded. Yeah. And Shai took a selfie, put up a little peace sign with the kid's phone, and then tossed it back into the crowd. I think our cameras on Valley Sports Oklahoma caught it. And so it was just a really cool moment that, that great fan-kid interaction and Shai just being the man.
The amount of trust that kid put in Shai's hands to catch the phone, and then obviously Shai's a point guard. He's gonna
be on time, on target.
Yeah, for sure. That is dedication to get a selfie.
Right. Yeah, that's
awesome.
Good stuff from Shai.
And so that kid was not the only Thunder fan in the building.
But not in the least.
Not in the least, because we saw a guy before the ball even tipped off, before the first horn was sounded. We were walking to our seats, and Gallo, you just pointed at me look.
Yeah. There are a lot of Oklahoman transplants to New York in the building that night. I had 2 or 3 people come up to me and say hey, we watch Valley Sports Oklahoma all the time. Great job by you all, on the broadcast. But there was one person
this guy
that was in the crowd.
Out of 10.
Trey Brown, I believe, from Tulsa. big shout out to you. I posted this photo on my Twitter. Zach Beaker, our team photographer, got a shot for our at OKC Thunder Twitter account as well. But he had a t-shirt with Michael Cage's face on it. And underneath the script just said, "That's nasty." And, he was so proud of the shirt. He was sitting in like the second or third row, kind of right diagonally behind the Thunder's bench. And, it was so priceless. You have to go look at our Thunder account and check out mine too, at Nick A. Gallo, excuse me. And the shirt is just amazing.
I want one.
Yeah, it's so good.
And Michael Cage's got a lot of great sayings. Make it do what it do, baby. Gotta play it like a riverboat gambler. That's nasty. It's just iconic by Michael Cage now. And that T-shirt was. I just want to know, does he have multiple? You think, or
so he told me that he found this shirt on Reddit, on some, a Thunder Reddit or something like that. And, there's all sorts of things flying around the internet, but the background, it's like a 90s shirt, it's kind of intense. It's got maybe some electricity outline or something. Yeah.
It kind of looks like, Michael Cage's Green Lantern or something like that. Yeah.
It's amazing. But the best comment that I saw underneath the post was, "That's drip, partner." Just, really leaning into the Michael Cageisms there with the partner reference.
Oh, man. Yeah, well, Trey, you just made it do what it do, baby. Yeah. That is awesome.
Yeah, so
now I got to go find
big
one.
props to Trey.
Yeah, we got to get one.
I hope to see you at Madison Square Garden in a few weeks when we're back.
Yep, February 14th, we take on the Knicks.
That's right.
All right, Valentine's Day, we'll see you there, Trey.
All right, you had something that blessed our timeline too.
Yes, this was something that, obviously everybody looks forward to, if I'm from Nashville, if we're playing in Memphis, that's a game that I circle on my calendar. Ty Jerome, who is a New York native, grew up in New York. This whole East Coast trip was one that he circled because we started in Washington, D.C., which is only about an hour and a half away from UVA, where Ty Jerome won a national championship in 2019. So when we were in D.C., but also Mamadi Diakite
I was going to bring this up.
is now on the Thunder roster on a 10-day hardship exemption. And both of those two guys were on the same team winning that UVA championship. And so in that crowd, you just saw so many UVA jerseys, a lot of Ty Jerome fans, guys wanted to take pictures and get some autographs. So that was a big time game for Ty. But also, being in New York, Ty told me that he was able to see his mom, little sister, his dad's got a newborn he was able to go see. And so it was just like a trip that Ty was really excited about. And I was just, what are the odds, your college town and then now your hometown all in one trip?
I want to talk about Diakite because this is a guy that fractured his hip in the preseason with the Thunder. And the team has helped him in his rehab. He's stuck around. He's been around the program. He's just one of those infectious personalities. And so they've been so excited to kind of once he's gotten back and fully healthy, to get him back into the mix. And so I know Ty was obviously extremely excited to have him back as well. And so for those two to be able to have some UVA jerseys in the crowd, Aaron Wiggins, we saw some Wiggins, Maryland jerseys in the crowd as well up there in DC. And then, the Big Apple, it's got to be so special for Ty. I know David Akinyoye, the Thunder assistant coach, is from the area as well. So those homecoming trips, you got to find your time to squeeze in your work and then, sneak off and find your family too.
Yeah. And especially during a strenuous, hard 82 game season where, it's a little unrelenting and you can't really find time to go back home really to go see your family. You got to be able to soak up that opportunity when it gets to you. And so Ty certainly did that, was able to see all of his family. You could tell it was just a happy Ty in New York City.
And then he came out and made some big time plays. The 6 assists we mentioned, the 3 that you mentioned in the corner that really was kind of we talked about earlier, the rhythm and flows of these NBA games. The team's going to make their charge, and then the team that's winning is going to hit that dagger shot that's okay, it's over, guys. Yes. And that was Ty's shot.
That was Ty's shot. So that was all of the stuff that blessed our time. It was just really a fun, happy trip. Got to see some sights, got to see some, some fun stuff in New York City as well. So just a good trip overall.
No doubt about it.
All right. Before we let you go, we got to let you know what's on tap for the Thunder before our next podcast. Obviously, we're back in studio, which means the Thunder is back in Oklahoma City. They've got a quick game at home against the Cleveland Cavaliers. That is going to be on Saturday. Then the Thunder sets out for its longest road trip of the season. It literally spans from Sunday to Saturday.
Yeah.
And 4-game road trip for the Thunder. Gonna be on the road for a while.
Yeah, it's Dallas, then San Antonio with a day in between, and then another day in between before a back-to-back Charlotte to Cleveland. So that's, spanning Western Conference foes, Eastern Conference foes, a couple different time zones. So definitely will be a big-time test and a part of this stretch of 6 out of 7 on the road for the Thunder.
Right. And one thing I am looking forward to, a little bit more warm climate than our East Coast trip that we just got back from. Outside of Cleveland, I think we're going to experience, not as much need for a puffer jacket.
Yeah, I was going to say that puffer jacket you've gotten used to on the game day reports, you might not see it for a few days.
Yeah. Also the puffer jackets from Shea on the walk-ins. Yeah. Might be a little, thinner jackets from Shea on this 4-game road trip.
If those get any bigger, I'm not sure he's going to fit in the doorway of the plane. And Shea's a skinny guy, but those things are huge.
They look so cozy. I'm so jealous every time I see them. I'm like, man, it just looks like something you could just fall asleep in. Yeah. Well, that is all for today's podcast. We want to thank you so much for watching and listening. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're not watching us on YouTube, be sure to go check out the Oklahoma City Thunder page and subscribe there as well. Thank you so much to our producer, Matt Bishop. And until next time, Thunder up and catch you later.